That's kind of the beauty of this poem, is that it uses all this amazing imagery to like bring the science to life.
Okay.
So it's not just like a dry textbook,
Gotcha.
Explanation.
Right.
It's actually like,
Interesting. Yeah.
it's painting a picture with words.
Okay, cool.
So for example,
Yeah.
right at the beginning, it talks about DNA is like a twisted double soul with, coils of its hanging curls.
Okay, so immediately visual.
Yeah.
I like that.
So like, what does that tell us about the actual structure of DNA?
So, I mean, we all know that DNA is a double helix.
Right.
Which is basically, you can kind of think about it like a ladder.
Okay.
It's been twisted into a spiral.
Right.
And so the sides of the ladder, those are the backbones.
Right.
Which are made up of sugar and phosphate molecules.
Okay.
And then the rungs of the ladder.
Yeah.
Those are the base pairs.
The famous base pairs.
Yes, exactly. And so you've got adenine always pairing with thymine and guanine always pairing with cytosine.
Right.
And the poem refers to this as like this friendly affinity, which I think is a really cool way to put it.
Yeah, like they're meant to be together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like they're drawn to each other.
So we've got this visual of a twisted ladder.
Right.
Now, does the poem go beyond that?
It does?
Like, does it actually talk about how DNA functions?
Yeah. So it actually touches on DNA replication.
Okay.
Which is essentially DNA making copies of itself.
Right.
And the poem talks about it as like survival by auto-creation.
Okay.
And duplication or cloning.
But how does that actually happen?
Well, it's a pretty complex process.
I bet.
But, I mean, the poem gives us some clues.
Okay, like what?
Well, it mentions like this rotating and twisting at speed.
Oh, yeah.
And then like vacant bonding sites to reveal.
So what's going on there?
So basically, for DNA to make a copy of itself, that twisted ladder, that double helix, it needs to unwind.
Okay.
Imagine like if you were trying to copy a recipe,
Right.
but the recipe was all rolled up.
Right, you'd have to unroll it to see it.
Exactly, you got to unroll it first.
Okay.
And so DNA has to uncoil so it can expose those base pairs.
Right.
So they can be copied.
Okay.
And the poem, I think that line about rotating and twisting at speed, that really hints at how dynamic this unwinding process is.
Yeah, it's not just like slowly unzipping. It's like...
Right, it's got to happen fast.
Yeah, it's serious business.
Yeah.
And the poem actually uses some pretty crazy imagery
Oh, yeah.
when it talks about unwinding. It says things like, plies must unbuckle, and torsional stiffness.
Yeah.
And then it even talks about how knots from helices are cut.
Right.
By this topo-isotonic master.
Yeah, what's that all about?
It sounds intense.
It does sound pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually highlighting a really important point.
Okay.
So when you unwind this tightly coiled DNA helix, it creates a lot of tension.
Oh, I see.
Think about
like if you're
untwisting a rope.
Like twisting, and then untwisting it too fast?
Exactly. If you do it too fast, it's going to get all tanged up.
Yeah.
And so to prevent that, cells use these special enzymes, like polymerase, which is, I think, who the topo-isotonic master is in the poem.
Oh, okay.
And so what this enzyme does is it actually cuts and rejoins the DNA strands.
Wow.
To relieve that tension.
So it's like carefully managing the whole process?
Exactly.
It's not just unzipping?
No, it's way more complicated than that.
There's a lot more going on. These little enzymes are like...
Yeah, they're like little mechanics. Making sure everything runs smoothly.
Keeping things from getting tangled up.
Exactly.
And speaking of things running smoothly, the poem also talks about like the precision of this whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
There's that line about how the master grasps the total to ensure pairing with true fidelity.
True fidelity, that sounds important.
What does that even mean?
So true fidelity is really talking about the accuracy of DNA replication.
Okay.
So basically, every time DNA makes a copy of itself, it needs to be an exact replica of the original.
So it's got to be perfect.
It has to be perfect.
Wow.
Every single base pair needs to be matched correctly.
Right.
Because if not, things can go wrong.
Because it's carrying the blueprint.
It's encoding what the poem calls the vital triplets of life.
Okay. Break that down for me.
So those triplets are codons.
Codons.
Which are groups of 3 base pairs.
Okay.
And each codon codes for a specific amino acid. And those amino acids, they link together to form proteins.
Proteins, the building blocks?
Exactly. They're like the workhorses of our cells.
Okay.
So if there's a mistake in those triplets, in those codons during replication, it could lead to problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, even a tiny little mismatch, just one base pair, can actually change the codon.
Right.
Which means a different amino acid
could
get added to the protein.
So that little change
it seems small.
can have big consequences.
It can have a huge ripple effect.
Wow.
It can make the protein like malfunction or not even work at all.
So that's how we get like genetic diseases.
That's how some genetic diseases arise, yeah.
So this poem, when it says true fidelity,
Right.
It's not messing around.
No, it's emphasizing how important accuracy is.
It's like the key
That's crucial.
to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing how much is going on.
I know, right?
At this microscopic level. Like, we have no idea.
It's mind-blowing.
It's just happening.
And that's what I think is so cool about this poem.
Yeah.
It takes these really complex processes
Yeah.
and it uses this artistic language
Yeah.
to make it understandable and memorable.
It makes it beautiful.
Exactly.
Instead of just like a bunch of science jargon.
Yeah.
So we've learned about the double helix structure.
Right.
We've learned about how this whole unwinding replication process happens.
Yeah.
We've learned about these enzymes.
Does little mechanics, keeping everything in check.
And how important it is to be accurate.
Accuracy is key.
And we learned all that from a poem. Who knew?
It's amazing.
So it really makes you wonder,
yeah,
what other scientific wonders are out there?